It is kind of amazing to find myself here, and I will explain a little bit. I was an advisor for youth and government as a principal at Marshfield High School in Coos Bay, and actually as a teacher and as a vice principal for like 25 years. I brought students from Marshfield High School to be a part of this assembled group. As I was getting ready to retire, there was an opening and I ran for a legislative position. I am now serving my 4th term. And just a couple of weeks ago, in the same places you're sitting, we had the election of the co-speakers. A historic event took place. We had an election, and at the end of the election, when everything was counted up, of the 60 members who sit here, 30 of them were Republicans and 30 of them were Democrats. So the first time in the 152-year history of our state did we have a situation where the divide was perfectly in the center. The Senate, a few sessions ago, and then about 50 years ago, has had that happen a couple of times. But for the House, with 60 members, it had never happened before. And we had to come together, and I will tell you that the experiences that I had with my students in youth and government, in bringing students here who came from diverse backgrounds, who came from different political parties, but who recognized as a group of people they had to come together and have conversations and discussions about important issues of the day, all of those experiences were really helpful for me as a new co-speaker to sit down with my other co-speaker and say, for Oregon's sake, and for the sake of this institution, which I care about a lot, we have to figure out how to work together in ways that's never been done before in Oregon. You're going to have a few days to work together with fellow students from across Oregon to have conversations about the same things we're having conversations about. How will we have enough funding to keep our doors open in the schools that you inhabit for the next 2 years? How are we going to help those less fortunate who, because of this global recession, are in places that they never believed they would be in need of help from this government? How are we going to find the resources to do that? How are we going to do one of the other constitutional duties of this organization, and that is redistrict? That means redesign how all 60 members come to this place and how our congressional districts are formed. Those are important decisions that are going to affect the rest of the history of our state. But they're no more important than the decisions actually that you make with each other as you go about making decisions about how you think this state should be run. Because I stand here to tell you that one of the students that I took, who spent some time in this house at the same time my youngest daughter was here, wrote a little bill that she was adamant about, she was passionate about, and it had to do with your driver's license and the ability for a person to actually donate in a living will sense part of themselves to another person if they were killed in an accident. And she had researched it and found out that even though we had a little place on our license, as soon as you died, you became part of the estate, and rarely did any of the things that you had hoped happen to your remains. She wrote a bill, Youth and Government. She stayed here with a woman in her home who opens her home, who happens to be a representative by the name of Representative Berger from the Salem area. They had a conversation that evening about that bill. It didn't. I don't remember if it actually made it through the legislation, but it made it into Representative Berger's frame of thinking, and she introduced that bill for 2 more sessions before it passed. And I had the opportunity to sit out here and call her. She now works for the National Cancer Society in Washington, D.C., and tell her that the bill she started with became part of the law of the state of Oregon. Not exactly the same because, as you know, you go through a committee process, you work on things, and things change. But she knows significantly that she made an impact. One citizen, one student from Coos Bay, Oregon, wrote a bill because she was passionate about an idea, wanted it to happen, and it is now part of our state law. You have that kind of influence, and because you're sitting here, the chances are you have a greater opportunity to be sitting here as a representative because you're already taking an active part of this. In the Senate, Senator George is sitting over there as a member today, sat in the same place you were as a student. Representative Barton, last session, who ran for Senate this session, but last session sat in the seat right down here, also a Youth and Government member from Newport. I have a young man who was one of my students at Marshfield High School, didn't do Youth and Government, but was involved with Boys State and other things. His name is Brian Clem. He is a member of this body and represents Salem right now, another one of my students. You have the opportunity ahead of you. You have some experiences that other students haven't, and I commend you for taking the time to do that. And with that, the last thing I said in my speech during our inauguration of the governor and our taking of the oath of office, I said, speak passionately about your ideas and beliefs, but temper your words and your actions so that all of us have a chance to forge a vision of Oregon's future. All of us care deeply about Oregon's future. It's okay for us to differ in how we get there, but it's not okay to wage war against those who differ with us. We are very happy to host you here today in the House chambers, and I am exceedingly proud as the co-speaker of the Oregon House of Representatives to pass this gavel to your speaker, James Cater. James?